Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So
hello and welcome to
Dave
Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky on W. All right, look, I think that's about as much time as I can wait. You know, I'll just want to tell everyone that I'm unable to hear the audio from the station's bumpers coming through my Skype. So if I'm talking over the music, I'm sorry. But guess what? You're listening to freedomslips.com, revolution.radio. This is Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky,
who's going to continue reading the intro. Thank you.
Nice. Welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky on WCCR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, which is really cool. Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. This is show number 304, 4, and 300, and we're talking about, well, we are continuing to talk about the hypothesis, including our epiphanies. Now we're on air, we're online, and we're also on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. And I did look them up, Dave. I looked them up. They're pretty cool little radios. So you
awesome.
know, yeah, I know. Like, I wanted to know. I mean, I've been talking about it for such a long time. I wanted to see what they look like. If you missed Solaris' show, then that's bad. I was bad as well. My wife got back today from 10 days in Japan, so I did miss it because I went to pick her up from the airport. And today we have 47.3 degrees in Sydney. It was 46 degrees that I actually saw myself. But before I go on about this, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Daruk people from here in Pamela Way, which is, you know, part of the, I guess, the Holroyd larger council, and the
Darkanyung people
for Dave up in Narara. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. Sorry, yeah, just very quickly, guys. There's a couple of things I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure Dave as well. So today we had a new record in Sydney, in New South Wales, I guess. We had 47 degrees Celsius. Dave, do you have to have a quick conversion at hand to Fahrenheit?
I am so ready to talk about this.
Beautiful.
So I just want to say, back in December, we had the hottest December day, 44.1. Doesn't sound that hot compared to 47. But for December, that's pretty hot. January, we know January is the hottest month. And you know what? We broke another record. And this is 3 records in 20 years, each hotter than the next, clearly. 45.6 was the first one 20 years ago. 46.5. Again, that was only, I think, 2 years ago. And now 47.1, but you know, they said there was an estimated 47.1. They're announcing 47.3 now, and that's about 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this
How much?
117 degrees.
Wow.
So I just want to remind people once again that this was the hottest all-time ever record for the city of Penrith and the entire Sydney metropolitan area, inclusive in that. So the hottest temperature for Sydney Metro, that's the whole Sydney Basin where everyone lives, the hottest temp ever recorded. Now, I want to remind people that we keep breaking records. Now, I remind people all the time, whoever wants to argue about, you know, climate change, I just want to say it's impossible to keep breaking records if climate change isn't real. So, just on that, Now that we've established that climate change is real, the cause is irrelevant. Just accept that it's changing. Now you can argue as much as you like. But that's what the extraordinary part is that it's still changing. It's still getting hotter. Yes, we're thawing out from an ice age that occurred about 12,500 years ago, and it's going to get warmer. The sea level will rise. Meki, how are those king tides? Do you see the news about the king tides?
I did actually, yeah. Well, so it's not surprising.
Well, it isn't surprising. Remember that all the low-lying areas that are around about 1 meter to 1.5 meters above the current sea level are flat for a reason. They're a reason because they were an intertidal zone. They were flat because they were submerged partly for the day under the sea. And as the tide retracted and came back again, this uncovered. It's the intertidal zone. So all of those areas that you see around will eventually be covered back underwater again. And once they do, our infrastructure is gone. There's no food in the shelves, electricity, sewage, fresh water, all of that goes in the toilet. Just letting you know, so when it happens, I can say I told you so. Anyway, Meki, we're not just having the crazy weather here, though, right? In the US, no. I'm sure everyone's well aware of the bomb cyclone. I love these new terms. The new terms that are being made every time.
Exactly. So just to be very clear, records are being broken, like Dave said, but in the States, on the East Coast there, they had to invent a new term for the cyclone that's coming or has come your way. That term didn't exist. Right? It's a new thing that was just made up to describe the thing that hit you. Okay.
It's a thing now.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, like superstorms.
So,
we didn't have those 15 years ago.
Exactly. Now let's put this in perspective just for a second, right? Now, so heat waves, fires. I mean, California just had the worst fires, right? I mean, horrible stuff. Like I've seen some of the pictures. We're talking inferno, but it's not just heat, and so it's also the cold that is and the storm. So everything that is an event that used to be a freak event, like a 100-year storm, let's call it, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. We've gone beyond that, Dave. We've now gone beyond that because we don't have words for the things that are hitting us, right? We now have to come up with right.
I like that the 100-year storm happened 3 years in a row.
Right?
The first year it's like
it's a long 3 years.
Next year, superstorm. We have to make up another name for it. But Meki, I was hearing stories about pets freezing solid in the backyard. I was hearing stories about iguanas falling from the trees in Florida. Mm-hmm. I saw photographs of palm trees with snow on them.
I know. People that have never seen snow. I saw this report with a girl, and she was, I think it was Florida. And she said, "Oh, I've never seen snow. It's I don't even know how to. The road was frozen." She said, "I have no idea how to drive on this. I don't know what to do. I mean, this is something I'm not. What is this? I mean, hello. This should not be here." And the answer, look, the thing is this, Dave. Like you pointed out quite rightly, we can argue all we want about the causes, but we can no longer ignore the fact that our climate is changing. Now, weather changes all the time. Yeah, weather, cold, hot, whatever, wonderful. When the weather patterns which make up a climate change over time and become more severe or milder, as the case may be, that's a change in climate. And the thing is this, all these extreme events that have been, with us now for the last, 15, 20 years, they're no longer extreme events. And we mentioned this before. They're now the new normal. That's now the new normal, right? This superstorm. Yeah, exactly. The bomber. What's it called? The bomber storm or whatever?
Yeah, the bomb cyclone.
The bomb cyclone. So now we can call that an extreme event. Now all the other storms, right, that we now have, like these massive blizzards and the hurricanes, that's the new normal. Okay, here we are. That's what it is. We now have a new extreme event. What we should pray for, and I'm not super religious, but what we should pray for is that doesn't become the new normal. So because, see, the thing is this, guys. I read a really cool book recently. I think it was a history of climate change looked at from 300 years in the future. I'll next time I'll tell you what the title of it's a tiny little book. It's very short, but it looks at our time right now from 300 years in the future, right? So they're looking back at our time right now, and Africa and Australia in that book became completely uninhabitable because the mean temperature changed by 6 degrees. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if the mean temperature of the planet changes by 6 degrees, like higher, as it were, going higher, then we have to we have to contend with the fact that most of our coastal cities are going to be gone. Most of our coastal cities are going to be gone. Okay, it's a very frightening time because we're now seeing it. Okay, these things are happening, and blasphemous Buddha just posted something in the chat. Storm of the century, blizzard of 1949. That's right. So now these storms used to happen. They were like freak events, and that's really the point here. We're not saying that these storms didn't happen. We're not saying that these freak events didn't happen. Of course they did. What we're saying here is they're becoming the new normal. So they're no longer freak events. You can't call them storm of the century. It's not possible, right? That's really the point.
So,
Dave, it's crazy.
It is crazy. So in Sydney, we experience a thing called a king tide. That is the winter accumulation of ice in Antarctica. It melts into the summer season, and that bulge of water makes its way up to the equator. And as it does, it comes past Sydney. It alters the tide height maximum only seasonally in summer, and it's called a king tide, and we know it's a thing. It's always been a thing. The problem is that the ocean level is getting higher. The king tide itself isn't bigger than it used to be, but the sea level it originates from is higher. So it's having a more severe effect. And I was talking to a fellow, Mackie, from Newcastle. Currently, I'm on holidays up the coast near Byron Bay, and I was talking to him about it. And some of the beaches, you can't walk down, like there's sand dunes before the beach, or maybe a rock wall, and the waves are up on the rock wall. The beach is gone, and it's because the tide's so high. Now, where I live, some of the roads were closed because the ocean was lapping over the road. Now, it doesn't do this very often. And in fact, it was one pier where the ferry comes up and stops, and people, offload and get on again to go somewhere else. And that was underwater. So it's getting closer and closer. And I was observing where there's a place called Brisbane Water, and Brisbane Water is it has a very flat promenade around the outside of it. It has a sandstone block wall. It's down to less than 1 block now. Less than 1 block height, and that's about maybe 60 centimeters. So 60 centimeters, which is 2 foot, at the high tide from lapping over onto the lovely, grassland and parkland that we have, which we've occupied, because it's flat. My daughters said to me today when we're driving around, they said, I can see all of the sports ovals are made on the low-lying flatlands. I said, I know, because they were already flat. So once the water is now tidal over the flatlands, there's a nice segue, you end up cutting off your infrastructure, your roads, your food transport, your electricity production. You've got sewerage and fresh water all being devastated by this, increase in sea level. And I have to tell you, it's happening. It's so happening. Try and find the records near where you live and see they all seem to cease at 2009. No one's reporting historically, adding to that historical database after 2009. I had to accumulate the figures myself and found they went up 40 centimeters in 5 years. 40. They were saying, a millimeter a year, everyone should be fine. But now they're accelerating. They're accelerating so fast that I think it's going to be a problem. Within 10 years, it's going to be a thing. We're going to be seeing, high tide now inundating where people live. And you see it in California only during the storms. Granted, it's very hilly. But if there's a place like Florida or like Texas, which has a slow gradient, or you're looking at like New Orleans, which is sub-water level, and they've actually got to pump water out, or Holland for that matter. When you're looking at places that are susceptible to it, I think we've got a problem, Mickey.
You think we have a problem? I think we have a minor challenge. No, look. All I can say is buy real estate inland. This is my advice. Or build on stills. Okay, that's but then really really high stills. Buying coastal or beach or harbor property, not a good idea at this point, because I think we've reached a juncture from which we can no longer return. So I don't care how much we try now to change things and do this and do that. Even if there was a will, I think, which there isn't, by the way, I think we're now well beyond it. Yeah, there isn't. We're well beyond. Yeah, exactly. We're well beyond. We're well beyond redemption here. I think. So what we need to do is prepare ourselves. Maybe move to higher ground, things like that. In Australia, the situation is slightly more severe. I guess similar to maybe to California and other hot areas, maybe, and anywhere around the equator as well. But certainly anywhere where it's already hot anyway, chances are it'll get hotter. Now we're skirting the livable. In Australia, we're already at the margin of what is actually achievable for human beings as far as living is concerned. It's an extremely hostile environment, and even the tiniest insects are trying to kill you. But if it gets any hotter, and 48, I mean, that's pretty. I mean, just to give you an idea, I don't know if any of you have a pizza oven or you bake or whatever, but if you open the door to your oven, or to any like maybe a barbecue, it's that blast of hot dry air that hits you. Now that's what it feels like outside all the time right now, like outside my house. So you get out of the car, which is nicely air conditioned, you walk out, and you can feel the heat searing your skin. The UV levels are up high, up to 7 as well. Like we got extremely high UV levels, so you get burned to a crisp. If you're a redhead and have freckles, stay in the cellar. Okay, don't go anywhere. But and especially the British tourists, guys, stay out of the sun. Don't drink. It's just stupid. We get a lot of people that drown in Bondi because they drink like in this kind of weather a lot of beer, and they think swimming is a good idea, and then they're lobsters and drunk, and they drown, or if they don't drown, they get the 2nd-degree burns. Now, it is a thing though. I mean, it feels so. It is hot, and when you actually, I know this is crazy. I did this. I'll tell you what I did. I went to the gym today, right? And I walked there and I jogged back. It's about 2 hours ago. It was about 46 degrees. When I jogged back, the air I was exhaling was colder than the air I was inhaling. Mm-hmm. Okay, you with me? So there was, so when I was exhaling, I could feel like this cool breeze on my face. That's how hot it is.
Wow.
Right? No, I didn't run very far, mind you, and the reason I did it 99% because I'm an idiot. But 1% because I wanted to say I did it, right?
Yeah,
that's one. But essentially, that's the heat we have here. And the thing is this: if the electrical grid fails, which is what happened in Europe, in fact, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer now, there was a heat wave hitting Europe, and it wasn't anywhere near this hot. But Europe is not equipped with air conditioning. Like they don't have cooling. They have heating.
Yeah, they don't have a situation where they require it. Well, they didn't have anyway.
Well, bingo, but now they do. And the thing is this: so if our grid, now I can tell you that right now everybody will have the air conditioning running for sure. There's no way people wouldn't. And I don't know how well our electricity grid will hold up. I mean, I think when Mr. Tesla has to come and help us all, what I will do, I will invest in a Tesla battery eventually, right? I will. And it's a lot of money, but you know what? I can't rely on this grid. It's just, I cannot rely, I can't put the safety of my family in the hands of the government and hope that, they're going to look after the grid. I mean, last year, the entire state of South Australia, which is bigger than Texas, by the way, The entire state of South Australia. Now, it only has 2 million people living there or whatever, right? That's about maybe 1.5. But the entire state blacked out for days.
It went offline. That's right.
Offline. So Tesla, in fact, Elon Musk, I should say, he came up with a solution, battery solution. I think it's up and running now.
It is certainly up and running, but it's not spoken about, Mickey.
No. Oh, well, what a shock. Because we need to burn more coal, Dave. We have to burn more coal.
There's not enough coal getting burned.
No, I think so. Let's have this coal burning rally. That's what we should organize.
So Mickey, I just want to put people's perspective here on the temperature. The hot water systems in our houses, regulated by the government, has a maximum of 50 degrees Celsius, a setting which you can't change. So that in case you're an idiot and you turn the hot water on only and you put your hand beneath the water, it won't damage your skin. Now, scientifically, that makes sense. However, today's temperature was only 2.7 degrees off that maximum.
Yes.
Think about that for a second. So over 50 degrees could damage your skin.
Yeah, absolutely. You get scalded. I mean, guys, so, I mean, I should have done it. I should have fried an egg on my car. But I
had some friends of mine that baked muffins in their car today.
See? Think about that. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
It was over 100 degrees inside their car.
That is okay. So do not leave your children or pets in the car, ever. Is my advice to you. Ever, never, ever. Oh, I'm just gonna quickly run in. No. Bad idea. Especially as this, develops.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something, Meki, just before we go to our stuff. Something really interesting that the station owner has advised me today. There is a 1-week promotion of free access to the archives.
Oh, cool.
The username is free trial, as well as the password free trial. No space in there. Go to revolution.radio and jump into the archives. You know what? Solaris on her show today, she had Steve Colburn, and they were talking about alien technology. They also talk about the Nazis in Antarctica and the moon and all sorts of really cool things. You can jump into the archives at revolution.radio using the username and password, a free trial, and you'll be able to get in there and listen to some shows. You know what? And I hope that encourages you, because it's only $5 a month, and that's all I pay, and that gets you access to the archives on a monthly basis. And you know what? It's awesome. I recommend you do it.
Yeah, that's true. It is.
It's nothing like a cup of coffee, and I drink a lot of coffee.
That's also true. In Sydney, though, I mean, everything's expensive in Sydney. It's just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, though, if you're in Sydney, don't buy harborside properties. Bad investment. But yeah, look, there's one other thing I wanted to share with you is on Facebook. And I want to say, before I share this with you, I want to say this: we are not living in a knowledge democracy. Okay, let me repeat.
I saw that post.
Right, we are not living in a knowledge democracy. What does that mean? Okay, what it means is that your ignorance, and I don't mean you specifically, dear listener, I'm talking about people out there, their ignorance is not as good as our knowledge. It just isn't, okay? You can't argue from a point of ignorance. Having said that, there was this beautiful, I mean, clearly it was a joke, but people took it seriously, started arguing, so I thought, you've got to be joking. Australia doesn't exist.
I like that one.
Right? It's apparently it's like a flat earther thing. It doesn't exist. Conspiracy. So I feel relieved, because I was struggling. I had a bit of an existential crisis. I now completely understand why that is. Thank you so much. I don't actually exist. So sorry. If I were to exist, I apparently would be living in Papua New Guinea. Is what people were saying.
Really?
Yeah, and I was hilarious. You should read the whole thing. It's just hilarious, because people say, "Well, fine. I live in Sydney and Melbourne, blah 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 blah." Where do you think I live? And these people that believe that Australia doesn't exist wrote back, "Well, clearly you live in Papua New Guinea. Clearly we are in Papua New Guinea." But having said that, I thought I'd share that with you. This was clearly a joke. Don't take it seriously. All I can say is don't feed the trolls. That was just a troll post. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you know, Mickey, I know you and I both have friends. They don't talk about it.
Speak for yourself.
Wow. Yeah. You know, they don't mention it to us, Mickey, because we've got the ammunition to counter them. However, if you're one of my friends and you're a flat earther, keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear it. And if you try to tell me that there's proof and that I should watch some video for 8 minutes which tells me why the flat earth is a flat, I'm just going to tell you to bugger off. I'm sick to death of listening to people still attempting to argue for the flat earth's existence. Do you know what? If it was truly flat, make a little model of it on a compact disc. Make a little mountain like Everest, for instance, and from every single point on that disc, you can see Everest.
Hey, that's Discworld. I love Discworld.
From every single location, and in fact, from Everest, you can see every other part of the planet. Well, it's not a planet, just the disc, and only one side of the disc too, mind you, and I don't know what's on the other side, but that doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense in the flat world, especially the sun's rotation, or the moon, or the planets, or even the stars. So,
Dave, you don't understand.
Oh, I know, right? I don't understand just how stupid you really are. That's what I don't understand. So I'm going to park it there. And you know what? And I don't care if you unfriend me on Facebook, because that's just the end of that.
And I think that's a fair statement, Dave. And just to be very clear, guys, we did a 2-show cycle on the flat Earth. And we really looked at it. I mean, like we look at everything. I mean, hey, I don't know. Could be true, right? But there's nothing in the theory of the flat Earth that holds any water. Listen to our show. If you can give me one proof point, I asked for a couple, but just give me the one. Just the one. I'll be going, oh, okay, I got it wrong. Okay, so don't put the burden of proof on me. Okay? I put the burden of proof on you. Okay? Because none of it makes sense, like Dave said. And the least thing that makes sense is actually the movement of the sun, and in fact the seasons. Because magically, this is what happens with flat earthers. Magically, the sun jumps from one orbit to another. It jumps so. First, it orbits a bit further out, and then it orbits a bit closer. But it jumps. So that's what it is, right? Whereas if you look at the actual reality of it, the reason we have seasons is because of the actual tilt. You know, the Earth is tilted. It is. Trust me on that. and as we go around in an elliptic, not in a circle, we go around the sun in an elliptic, right?
Yeah.
That's why. Anyway, we do. But as the tilted part gets closer to the sun, that's summer, all right. And as the tilted part moves away, it becomes winter. So that because we got two hemispheres, the seasons are reversed. And if you look at the celestial mechanics, it actually makes sense. Wow, right, that makes perfect sense. Wow, thank you. It makes no sense for the sun to jump orbits. Like what? Like how? Ooh, well, some magic elf just pops it across into another orbit. That's
how did
insanity.
You know that, Nicky? You're not meant to tell people about the magic elf.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. My bad.
Or the Coriolis effect, which I
Jesus, there's another thing.
Yeah.
No, that's not real.
Well,
because Australia doesn't exist, remember?
Well, that's true.
There's nothing. Go on.
Since we don't exist, and the flat Earth must truly be real, then what I like the most is, and we did do this. We did support the flat Earthers' argument that NASA lie, and so we didn't provide any evidence that NASA had in our explanation of the Earth being an actual sphere, like everything else we see out in the universe. Not NASA, not NASA's photos, not NASA's anything. We helped you and we didn't provide that argument. We pandered to your weaknesses, and we appreciate you for that, because that's just another mountain of evidence which you don't want to know about. You know, the simple fact, not even NASA, but just Sputnik, for crying out loud, or projectile motion calculates the rotation time of something in orbit. And you can't orbit something that is flat in a circle above it.
Dave, you're just mathematizing scientifically.
Science. Science.
You mathematize scientifically. That's not good.
I'm turning into Moss from the IT crowd. 4. I mean 5. I mean fire. Seriously, everybody, please don't talk to us about the flat Earth unless, like Meki said, you have some evidence. This is going to do us in, isn't it? Some evidence which we didn't get to mention, which supports the theory outright.
You know what I would love to see? I'd like to see a picture of the edge, and then I want to see a picture of the underside. That's what I want to see. I want a picture of the edge, and I want someone to go over and give me a picture of what's at the bottom. I want to know what's at the bottom of the flat Earth. That's what I want to know.
Of course, we can't ever know because you're not allowed down to Antarctica, Mickey.
The big wall. The big ice wall around the world.
It hurts. It hurts.
But I have to say something, though. Those were simpler times. You know, when the Earth was flat? Come on. They were simpler times. People didn't venture too far. You stayed home because you could fall off. That's what would happen. You fall off.
I want someone to explain how the sun can disappear for 3 months if you're in Antarctica.
Yep.
Do that for me. Even the Arctic, for that matter. You know, it just does my head in. Please don't post it into the chat room, you gooses. Anyway, look, we love each and every one of you, and some things just aren't true. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Anyway, so let's get cracking, because we're talking about the... unless you got something you want to...
No, we would be talking about it if I was able to download that file you sent me.
I did send it to you. It said it's...
I know. Do it again, if you wouldn't mind, please. Esteemed co-host.
I'm happy to send it. No worries, man. Just everybody on online and listening. Dave is visiting today, so he's not actually at his usual location at home.
And I'll tell you, Mackie, that with the temperatures we lost power at home.
Wow.
And it hasn't returned yet. And my UPSs went flat, and I've got notifications from my house that it's gone offline. So,
did you get it now?
Oh yeah, I think I've got it now. Let me have a look to see if I can grab it.
Okay, so just very quickly as a recap while Dave is opening the file. Last week we spoke a little bit more about the hypothesis. we mentioned things like our awareness cascade hypothesis. You know, that we might have to reach critical mass as far as population is concerned, and we thought that 7.778 billion people, and then some, would be the number for us to reach before we have a spontaneous elevation, or quickening, ascension, whatever you're going to call it. And the reason we came up with that, because I was thinking about it, why did we have all these civilizations before us, and clearly they were destroyed? And I don't think, and we spoke about that as well, I mean, I don't think it can be argued anymore that there were high-level civilizations before ours on this planet, and maybe even on the other planets of the solar system. And maybe where the asteroid belt is now, according to Boltz's law anyway, there should be a planet. There now is an asteroid belt. Is it possible there was a planet and it was destroyed in some kind of, maybe even a war or a natural catastrophe, and there were civilizations on that? Now, but then I asked myself, well, why would these civilizations become extinct on a fairly regular basis? And when I say extinct, I mean we would be thrown back to the Stone Age, literally. You have to start from scratch. And I started thinking about it more and more. And then I looked at the elite, I looked at reincarnation, I looked at all the things. And again, there's one of the epiphanies was, well, clearly, maybe if we reach, and this is a complete out there kind of thought, but maybe if we reach a certain, if we reach a certain level of population volume, and in this case 7.778 billion, which by the way we should hit in 2020, but also we came up with it by using the Fibonacci sequence. If we hit critical mass, and critical mass, as you know, in nature, it's a thing. Maybe at that point we just spontaneously shift to the next level, or maybe even go home. So it is actually necessary for the population to be culled back. That's our thing. I mean, it could be completely wrong, but it doesn't form a fundamental pillar of the hypothesis, but it would explain why we go through this cyclical, these cycles of destruction. I mean, another reason could be, of course, that we inherently, have to destroy what we build. Like little children at the beach building a sandcastle, or building with blocks, building a tower, and then there's nothing more fun than knocking it back down, right? We spoke about a whole bunch of other things as well. We spoke about the Cathars, and we spoke about the Knights Templar, and how some of that knowledge that those ancient sects had survived to this day in various secret societies. We drew a parallel to the Crusades as well, and the crusade that was in fact held against the Cathars, the Albigensian Crusade. Fundamentally, the difference between the heretics, or the Christians that believed in the Gnosis, or the Gnostic Christians, which the Cathars really were as well. There's the Bogomils, others. They believed that Jesus Christ was in fact made of subtle matter, like physically, like he wasn't made of the gross matter we are made of, and because he was made of the subtle matter, which is higher in vibration, he couldn't have died at the cross. They say it's not possible because he was made of subtle matter. It's much better or finer or whatever you want to call it on a higher frequency level than all of us. So therefore, he couldn't have possibly died at the cross. That's really the main difference in belief systems. And the Catholic Church said, hey, that's the major thing for me here. Well, if he didn't die on the cross for our sins, then the whole thing is just going to fall apart. Well, they say the Cathars and the Gnostics, not really. We still have to adhere to his teachings, but we are all responsible. We're all individually responsible for being we can. He did not die for us. He didn't wash away our sins. So, just confessing and going to the church, and all that stuff is not going to help you. It's not going to do anything for you. You're actually deceiving the people, is what the Gnostics said. And the Catholics go, hey, you can't say that. The Pope didn't like that very much. He said, hey, you guys, this is the basis of our belief system here. We've got a great enterprise going here. Look at it, afterlife insurance. Don't you start peeing into our soup? And so they did pee into their soup, as it were. And they were hunted down, burnt at the stake. Quite a few of them, and that's history. So now Catholics, obviously, the Catholic Church has survived. We think we understand what Christianity is. we think we understand how it started, and we think we understand what the tenets are. We do not. We have no clue. We don't know. I mean, so again, you have to study the Gnostic texts to understand there were actually opposing views of opposing points of view, and I'm not talking about opposing points of view, as if you should be Catholic or Protestant, because all Christians today, all mainstream Christians believe the same thing, that Jesus Christ died at the cross to wash away their sins. So if you believe in Jesus Christ, is the belief system, and you truly believe with all your heart, then you will go to heaven because he will cleanse your sin away. And the sin they're cleansing away is the original sin, which is us being kicked out of paradise because we ate from the tree of knowledge. Another wonderful invention, the original sin, because it casts women in a wonderfully bad light, because it was Eve's fault that Adam ate the apple, obviously, right? So again, the Catholic Church has really sewn it up. It's fantastic. It's really awesome. But so they came up with the original sin, which is a BS in my opinion. But in order to get rid of the original sin, Jesus came along and washed it away. And here you go. You have to believe in what we tell you, or you will go to hell. By the way, another Catholic invention. So you can see how this one thing builds up on another. And I know you're gonna hate me a lot for this, guys, but that's actually what happened. Okay, it's actually what happened. Now, okay, that's how far we got. So back to the hypothesis very quickly. It is an ingenious prison we are caught in, and we mentioned this, right? No matter what you accomplish, in this prison. It is all taken away in your next life. You must start again. We talked about reincarnation, you know, and most of us don't remember our previous lives. And believe it or not, I don't think reincarnation can be argued anymore. We discussed this as well with you guys. I mean, there's so much, and you can't really say anecdotal evidence anymore because, you know, people have spent 40 years of their life, or, you know, to compile thousands and thousands of data points. Yeah, around reincarnation. It can no longer really be argued, I don't think. And some of them are incredibly compelling. And I do urge you to go back to our show on reincarnation to make yourself familiar with those. In fact, early Christians believed in reincarnation as well. And reincarnation in the East is just a thing. Yeah, well, yeah, of course it is. You know, there it is. Why wouldn't you think it is? And again, these faiths and philosophies predate ours in the West by thousands of years. Anyway, now, not only that, though. It's not only that you have to start again. All right? This reality is full of pain and suffering. And the more we love here, the more we suffer through loss and war and violence. Right? So the more you care, like, the more you care about this world, you know, your family, your friends, other people, the environment, animals, the more you will suffer. Because this is fundamentally a violent place. Right? It is. It's a horrible, horrible place. And killing to live in this reality is a fundamental principle. You kill to live. All right? It's actually horrific. Right? You have to kill to live. I mean, plants, for the most part, don't really live by that. I mean, they you know, have photosynthesis, and not all plants are like that, but most plants, they live, you know, just by using the sun's energy and, you know, some nutrients from the ground. Right? But most animals kill to live. Most animals, not all animals, but most animals kill to live, including us, of course. Okay, that very violence of this existence, I believe, is damaging our essence, right? Our true essence, our soul, our ka, or ki, I don't care what you want to call it, right? Our chi. It is what is reflected in our karmic debts. We need to break the cycle of violence, revenge, feuds, counterattacks, and hate, because that is carried across lives, I believe. You carry all this stuff with you. It's like baggage. We talked about Christmas Carol and how Marlowe visits Scrooge and this change he forged, you know, throughout his life and all that stuff. This stuff stays with you. All the bad stuff, all the good stuff too, though, because that's the stuff that you take with you. You can't take any of the stuff that you own, like a car, house, none of that. But all the experiences and all the insights and all the good things and all the bad things you do, right? They stay with you because you know them. Okay. Now, maybe the whole point of keeping us here is to damage our souls. I'm not. In fact, the Epiphany has moved me a little away from that, but we'll share with it, you know, a little later. But I'm certain that our souls do get damaged. Okay. And all who come close to knowing this truth are killed. The Cathars, the Essenes, the early Christians, Jesus, blah 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 blah. You can all of them. Bogomils, they're all persecuted, I should say. They're all persecuted. And then prosecuted, but first persecuted. So you know, what's the answer then? I mean, what is the answer? And we will spend more time on this. But love. The answer is love. Everybody, irrespective. Our cruelty and greed and ignorance have made this prison hell. It's a prison, but we and our attitudes have made it hell. Okay. Now there are two objectives. One, of course, is to get out of prison, and we'll talk about that. The other is to turn this prison into not hell, yeah, somewhere livable. However, some sages and Buddhas and wise men and holy people return to help us turn this prison into paradise. So they have actually moved on, but there's some stories around people that have come back in their reincarnation, remembering full well exactly what their past lives were, and actually having managed to get out of prison. But because they see us here, they come back and try to help us and show us the way. Now, they can't force us, and they can't do it for us either. So people say, oh, you know, if I do this many prayers for that person, I do this good deed for that person, then, you know, this person can do this and that. No. It's all up to the individual, and that's what the Catholic Church has taken away. This is probably the greatest disservice that organized religion does. And Islam is the same. It takes away the individual's responsibility to some extent. It is your responsibility to live a good and righteous life. You can't just go and confess and everything is good. It doesn't work that way. Okay, that's my opinion. But it's a great disservice because a lot of people live and die believing that, oh, if I just do this and that, then I'll be okay. You know, it's like accumulating points. No, your entire life should be virtuous, right? Ideally you shouldn't eat meat. Okay, you shouldn't engage in violence. You should engage in bearing false witness, like against your fellow people. I mean, everybody lies, but you shouldn't lie either to your advantage or to someone's disadvantage, right?
Mm.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing, a very, very quick aside, which I thought was a character study. There's a guy that I worked with, and he went to our new boss, and he sat him down for an hour, and I managed a team of, 40 or 50 people. And he sat him down, like my boss. So my boss's boss. Actually, he went to my boss's boss, and he was reporting to me, this guy. Anyway, so off he went. And he said, oh, I'm the best guy you have. I'm the only guy you have. All the other guys are crap. In fact, he named all the people, all of them. I said, oh, this person is bad, and that person is bad. And, so for an hour. So then eventually my boss's boss came to me and said, Mackie, you got a problem. I said, what's that? You only have one good guy out of 50. I said, isn't that right? No, hang on. So he was taking the jolly as well, right? He didn't take it seriously. So, but he said, and I said, oh, is that right? Who came to you? And so he told me the whole story, right? Because we've got a good relationship, and it's really about relationships, by the way, anywhere, in workplace, anywhere. And I had a bit of a chuckle. Okay, look, that's how he is. That's what he does. But the one thing, look, I don't mind people talking themselves up. That's cool. I get it, and it's necessary in this world. So do what you have to do. Do not talk yourself up by talking others down.
Mm.
Yeah. It's okay to talk. You can say you're the best guy in the team, but then don't say, oh, Bob and Joe and Bill and Mary and Laura, they're crap. You should fire them, all of them. They're horrible people. They don't know what they're doing. They're sleeping. They're asleep at the till. But it's just a case study in who we really are, right? I mean, I was astounded. Now, escape from this prison must not be the only answer, though. Yeah, it seems we can turn this place into paradise as well, and that's my point here, right? And I'm using the word paradise in the sense of home, because I believe we're not home, and our objective must be to escape prison and go home. That's what I think. Okay, but I do believe, with the right attitude, this place can become our home or get very, very close. Now, we do not know why we are in the state of existence, or who has put us here, or why. Many explanations are possible. Maybe our collective capability poses a threat, or maybe we're here by accident. However, there is now an epiphany we had recently. I was thinking about stuff, and all of a sudden I thought, hey, hang on, quantum mechanics. Ooh, it makes sense. And the epiphany explains a little more as to why we're here. We're going to talk about that at some later stage during the cycle. The epiphany explains why we're here. It really does. It makes sense once you think about it. But Dave, how real is our reality anyway?
I'd be able to do that if Skype let me download the show notes. Mackie, I've messaged you. Now I've messaged you my email address. Just flick it to there, and we'll be right.
So, guys, yeah, look, this is the beauty of live radio. I love it. So let me just. But the point here is, and this is, let me just ramble a bit about the epiphany while I put this together. The point here is that once you connect everything, and this is really the important thing as well, all right? It's important to understand that everything is connected, okay? And you have to connect completely, seemingly, completely unrelated things. It is very important to draw parallels and connect them. And this is really what you have to do in order to understand everything fully. Now, what we've done these days, and maybe even deliberately to some extent, we have started to compartmentalize knowledge. Back in the olden days, people could know everything, right? like the Renaissance men and women, Da Vinci and those people. They could know everything about everything pretty much. And but today that has become increasingly more difficult because there's just too much to know. So Dave and I, we can go so deep on most things. So we can go very deep on some things, but we can go so deep on pretty much everything. In my case, as long as it isn't popular culture, right? So that's the only thing. But the thing is that you have to be able to draw a parallel or a connection between these seemingly unconnected things. And for us, it has, like, quantum mechanics has been such an eye-opener. I remember doing quantum physics in high school in Germany, and we touched on the double slit experiment, and it was just, oh yeah, well, this particle is a wave and it's a particle. There you go. Okay. There was no time spent on the mystery. It's just a statement of fact. Well, this experiment shows that this particle clearly is both, without going further into the implications. I remember this very, very clearly.
And you know why? Because there isn't an explanation behind it.
That's it. That's
I know.
Right.
I know.
But yeah. So look, all I can say is that we have a whole bunch of knowledge, but we don't allow our children to fully appreciate this knowledge. It's one thing to learn something and then know it. It's another thing to understand it. So how can I put this best? So you can learn the times tables and long division off by heart. 2 times 2, 3 times 4. You can learn all of that, and without thinking, you can just blurb it out. Without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
How much more valuable would it be to understand the method of doing it? So rather than just knowing 3 by 4, you can now do 412 times 5,218 because you know the method. Like, there's no way you can actually memorize that calculation. But if you've got the method, right? If you've got the method, then you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, and I'll be honest with you, I don't understand this new math that's happening out there in the world. I don't get it at all. I don't know. It's like someone with half a brain decided to do math and make your children more stupid. Okay? It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Listen to Revolution Radio, Freedom Slips.
That's what I feel. Someone went out of their way to make people's children, our children, more stupid by doing this new math. And I'll be honest with you.
There is no denying.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. All right. So, Mackie, just want to tell the people that you're listening to Shiny Side Out with David Mackie. I forget the show number because I'm not at home to reference it. Mackie, do you know what it is? No. So, I think it's like 305 or 306 or something like that. And we're really glad that we've got you on board with us through this journey of ours. This is the 6th year we're on air, and we're really appreciating your assistance. Now, we don't need your assistance as much as the station does. The station, revolution.radio, needs you, the listener, to support them. And you can get a thumb drive with survival documents. You can, for donating to the station. It's so easy. You just go to revolution.radio and there's a donate button, and you can listen from there. Not only can you listen from there, but you can, access the archives. At the moment, there's a free trial of the archives, and the username and password is free trial. without a space between the words. One word. Jump in there and you can listen to everything for 2017 plus what's currently been done in 18 as well. Jump in there and access it. Now, I pay $5 a month, which is a cost of a cup of coffee to access the archives, but you can do it for 1 week, this current week, and you'll love what you've got access to. Oh my goodness, it's awesome. Now, I'd like to thank all the people who are following us for the first time. We hope your journey is a good one, an easy one. And thank you, Rectify, for letting us know. Unfortunately, we're not getting any audio coming back through from the station, so we don't hear the music with our cans on. We don't hear it. I've actually got to play the station separately, but it's a 30-second delay, so we're not really hearing it. Sorry about that. Sorry if it's giving us a problem. Now, we're talking about our hypothesis. Now, Meki's been able to send me, my co-host has been able to send me the show notes, and he asked me one simple question before the break, and that is, but how real is our reality anyway? Just food for thought. Remember that we spoke about the holographic principle. Now, the holographic principle was first postulated over 20 years ago as a possible solution to Stephen Hawking's famous information paradox. This is the paradox, is essentially that black holes appear to swallow information, which, according to quantum theory, is impossible. But while the principle was never mathematically formalized for black holes, theoretical physicist Juan Maldacena demonstrated several years later that holography did indeed hold for the theoretical type of space called anti-de Sitter space. Unlike the space in our universe, which is relatively flat on cosmic scales, anti-de Sitter space is described by mathematicians as curves inwards, like a saddle. So it's bent and twisted. If this depiction of space is correct, then, like any computer, there is an inherent limit to the universe's data storage and processing capacity. That makes sense, right? So anti-de Sitter space is not directly relevant to our universe, but it allows us to perform calculations that would otherwise be very difficult, if not impossible, Grumilla said. Within this theoretical space, however, Maldacena, where am I, showed that two sets of physical equations mapped perfectly onto each other, the equations of gravitational theory and those of quantum field theory. This correspondence was totally unexpected, because while gravity is described in 3 spatial dimensions, quantum field theory requires only 2. That the laws of physics produced identical results. 2 or 3 dimensions pointed to anti-de Sitter space, which is a holographic nature. This was the first instance where somebody implicitly showed how holography works, Grumilla told me, or told the writer. But given that our universe is not anti-de Sitter space, it's approximately flat and large scales. It's interesting to ask whether the holographic principle applies to flat space as well. That's a really interesting possibility. And to round this off, to demonstrate that our universe can indeed be seen as a hologram, physical quantities would have to be calculated using both quantum field theory and gravitational theory in flat space. And the result would have to match. Grumilla decided to see whether one key feature of quantum mechanics, which is quantum entanglement, could be replicated using gravitational theory. Meki. I can't hear you now, Meki. I'll just keep going.
Excuse me, I was on mute. Excuse me. There you go. Now, okay, when 2 quantum particles are entangled, they cannot be described individually, but instead they form a single quantum object, even if they're far apart. there's a measure that describes how entangled a quantum system is, known as the entropy of entanglement. After several years of work, Grumiller and his colleagues managed to show that this entropy takes on exactly the same value when calculated in gravitational theory and quantum field theory for spaces like our universe. Okay, both. This calculation affirms our assumption, says Riegler, that the holographic principle can also be realized in flat spaces. It is evidence for the validity of this correspondence in our universe. Okay, let me say this again. This calculation affirms Riegler's assumptions, as he states, that the holographic principle can also be realized in flat spaces. It is evidence for the validity of this correspondence in our universe. If the holographic principle does indeed describe our universe, it could help resolve many inconsistencies between relativistic physics and quantum physics, including the black hole information paradox. It would also offer researchers a way to solve some very tough quantum problems using relatively simple gravitational equations. But before we can be sure that we're living in the matrix, there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously. Now, this is Grumiller. I'm quoting Grumiller here. We did this calculation using 3D gravitational theory and 2D quantum field theory, but the universe actually has 3 spatial dimensions plus time. A next step is to generalize these considerations to include one higher dimension. There are also many other quantities that should correspond between gravitational theory and quantum field theory. Examining these correspondences is, of course, ongoing work. Beyond the theoretical considerations, there's the entirely different matter of pulling back the illusion and experimentally observing the holographic nature of reality. How do we draw back the curtain, Dave, is the question, really, right? How do we draw back the curtain? How do we glean the nature of the matrix? As it happens, physicists at the Department of Energy's Fermilab are now trying to do just that. As Motherboard reported last year, or well, probably a couple of years now, Fermilab Center for Particle Astrophysics Director Craig Hogan recently hypothesized that our macroscopic world is like a 4-dimensional video display, created from pixel-like bits of subatomic information 10 trillion times smaller than atoms. That's pretty good resolution, by the way. To our macroscopic eyes, everything around us appears 3-dimensional and smooth and analog. But just as moving your face towards the TV screen will cause pixels to come into focus, try it. Go close to your TV screen, see what happens. If we stare deeply enough into matter on a subatomic level, the bitmap of our holographic universe might reveal itself. So what he's saying is, if we get close enough to these tiny itsy-bitsy particles, we might be able to look at the holographic universe. So, if this depiction of space is correct, then like any computer, there is an inherent limit to the universe's data storage and processing capacity. What's more, that limit should bear telltale signatures, so-called holographic noise, that we can measure. As Hogan explained to Motherboard's Jason Kerbler, if we are indeed living in a hologram, the basic effect is that reality has a limited amount of information, like a Netflix movie when Comcast is not giving you enough bandwidth. So things are a bit blurry and jittery. You know, like when you haven't got enough bandwidth and, you know, things stop and start and it goes jittery, blurry, and sometimes the sound is out of sync. Nothing ever just stands still, but it's always moving a tiny bit. Reality's bandwidth fuzz, if you will, is exactly what Hogan's lab is now trying to measure, using an instrument called the holometer. That's a thing now, which is basically a really big and powerful laser pointer. We're specifically trying to determine if there is a limit to the precision with which we can measure the relative position of large objects. Post-doctoral researcher Robert Lanza told the author in an email. This would represent a fundamental limit in the actual information that the universe stores. How about that? The actual experiment that will decipher this involves measuring the relative positions of large mirrors separated by 40 meters, using 2 Michelson laser interferometers with a precision 1 billion times smaller than an atom. Still not a trillion, but pretty small anyway. If, as according to the holographic noise hypothesis, information about the positions of the 2 mirrors is finite, then the researchers should ultimately hit the limit in their ability to resolve their respective positions. Dave?
What happens then, Lanza said? We expect to simply measure noise, as if the positions of the optics were dancing around, not able to be pinned down with more precision. So in the end, the experimental signature we are looking for is an irreducible noise flaw due to the universe not actually storing more information about the positions of the mirrors. The team is currently collecting and analyzing data and expects to have their first results by the end of the year. Lanza told me they are encouraged by the fact that their instruments have achieved by far the best sensitivity ever to gravitational waves at high frequencies. The physics of gravitational waves is unrelated to holographic noise. However, the gravity wave results demonstrate that our instrument is operating at top-notch science quality. I like that, Neki. They science. And we are now poised to experimentally dig into science, or the science of holographic noise, Lanza said. So it seems that for now, we will have to wait for the physicists doing the hard math and shooting the lasers to tell us whether our lives are just a very sophisticated illusion. In the meanwhile, the big question on my mind is, how the heck will such a revelation affect us? This knowledge won't impact our everyday lives in the same way that knowing about the Big Bang or other galaxies does not change our everyday lives, Grimler said. But in the same way that knowing that the universe started with a Big Bang, that's questionable, I have to continue on my train of thought, has profoundly changed our view of the universe. Knowing that the universe is like a big hologram is a profound insight. Lanza agrees it would force us to fundamentally alter our perception of reality in a way that many of us, myself included, would have a hard time wrapping our heads around, he said. Indeed, it sort of untethers the definition of simulation entirely. If we are living in a giant hologram, can we really say that all the sim worlds and MMOs we've built aren't as real as our universes, planets, star clusters and galaxies, all of which boil down to quantum dots on a cosmic bitmap? Now, Meki, I just want our listeners to understand the Planck length. The Planck length is the smallest point at which it's measurable that anything can actually reside. It's the smallest definition. If you had like a 4K TV, you can't have something occupying half a pixel on the screen. It's quantized to a single pixel. If you wanted to move that pixel, that red pixel, from one pixel to the next one next to it, it's either in one pixel or it's in the other one. And that's a quantization of the universe, which has been discovered by discovering the Planck length, the minimum space between things. It can either be in one Planck or the other Planck length. Yeah, it makes sense. And that's what they're trying to unravel with this experiment. It's extraordinary. Mm-hmm. How would that affect us? Meki, we're in the Matrix. Simple as that.
That's right. And look, there was recently a study done around computer simulations. Well, when I say recently, some time ago now, it mathematically speaking, it is more likely or more probable that we live in a simulation than not. That doesn't mean we are living in a simulation. All I'm saying here is that mathematically speaking, statistically speaking, probability-wise speaking, it is more likely that we are. Because there would be one would imagine, one real reality, right? And all other realities might spin off that one, be realities within realities. And if you've seen the 13th floor, you get boxes within boxes type stuff, right? Because the Matrix really only gives you the one layer. But there are other concepts and other movies, other books, where you have layers upon layers and boxes within boxes, which is really very fascinating. And I read a book recently where that book was set in a reality where people were video gamers, video game producers or makers of video games, right? They created this amazing engine, this world engine, which was so real that it had so much computing power. It was quite astounding. But what they found as they were doing that is, and this is, sorry, I'm giving the book away here, but
Spoiler.
I know, right? What they found is that they lived in a simulation, and all these people are like, what the book follows all these suicides. I mean, why are these people suiciding? What's happening? What's going on here, right? And the answer is, of course, that they figured out that they're not real in a sense. They are just simulations in a computer system themselves. And and it's this quantum physicist that gets to the bottom of it. And look, it's a really good read. It's a bit of a mind bender. If you like the kind of thing, I will try to find the title. Sorry, but the point here is, it's very interesting. There's a possibility that this is a simulation. Having said that, do you feel any less real if it were? Do you still have a soul? I mean, fundamentally, if we are living in a simulation, let's say we are, what does that really mean? Now, again, I contend that our essence, our soul, our key, I don't care what you want to call it, right, is a real enough thing. Where it is housed doesn't matter. In fact, as far as the hypothesis is concerned, it makes perfect sense for this to be simulation. In fact, once we talk about the Epiphany and quantum mechanics a bit more, and a few other things there, specifically quantum decoherence, you will understand what I mean. This reality could very well be just made up. And see, the funny thing is this. The ancient Gnostics and before that, ancient secret societies believed that this world, or this universe, this reality, was built by the great adversary. Yeah? The great... the pretender to the throne of God, if you will, this reality, right? So that's why this is not, in fact, reality. Okay, this is not reality. This is a construct, and we are caught here somehow. And if it's a computer simulation, I mean, it's completely irrelevant because it's still a prison, it's still a construct. And I just want to give you a glimpse at the Epiphany, and you probably know it already if you're a listener for more than one show. In the Epiphany, we looked at a quantum decoherence. So essentially, what happens? A double slit experiment. If you observe it or measure it, the particle behaves like a particle and goes through one slit or no slit. That's all good. If you do not measure or observe what the particle is doing, it acts like a wave. Now that's called a quantum. That's a quantum wave. Like it's essentially it's all possibilities happen at the same time. That's the wave. That's what happens. So everything happens to that one particle.
But Meki, it does the impossible and interferes with itself.
Yeah, because everything happens. Exactly, including interfering with itself. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So that's what happens. So you go through it, and what happens? What happens is that the wave function collapses. Yeah, they call it collapses into the one reality. That's what's called quantum decoherence. So in its pure state, all possibilities exist. That's the wave function. In its collapse state, the decoherence, it's only this reality.
It's only the reality that we're aware of.
That's correct, because
it conforms to.
Correct. So, but it takes observation for this reality to occur. So the quantum wave function needs to collapse to something, and it collapses to something that we expect. Now, this is where I'm going out on a limb. I'll get a lot of hate, and that's all good. I don't mind. but essentially, the wave function collapses into what we call reality, right? Every moment of our existence that happens. By the way, this is not an experiment in isolation. Every moment of our existence, this happens, and it's the agreed upon reality that it collapses into. We all agree that the reality is what it is, and we're taught about this reality. These are designed in a way that already predetermines how we view reality. We can only look forward. Everything is linear for us, right? We can only look forward. This is massive limitation, other limitations as well. But okay, but it requires the observation. That's really the crux here. It requires the observation of us, or an intelligent. Okay, again, this is where the hate bit comes in. I say that it requires observation of a sentient being, right? or at least self-aware to some extent, in my opinion, for the quantum decoherence to occur. It has to be measured, and then that measurement needs to be observed by someone, right? If it's measured and no one ever observes it, well, then it's Schrödinger's cat. Who knows? Who knows what happens? But as soon as we look at it, well, it's true, right? But as soon as we look at it, bang, there it is, right? And this is this is the epiphany. We are here. So this simulation, this reality can exist. That's why we're here. It needs us to observe it, and it needs us to perpetuate itself. That's why we're here.
That's the good word in there, Mackie.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. You see, who made the rule in the first place for a subatomic particle, when observed, to now behave the way we think it should occur? Now, that is what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I totally agree with you. That does not make any sense unless it's a hologram, unless it's a matrix.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's artificial in a way, right? This is the biggest pointer, in my opinion, to the artificiality of this reality. Mm-hmm. And again, this is the mystery school's teaching as well. This reality was created by the great adversary. I don't like to call him Satan or Lucifer because of these religious connotations. I don't think like that. But so it was created. Yeah, light bearer. Yeah, that's it. You can call that because that's what his name really means. But the point is that this is what the Gnostics believed. This world was made from gross matter, so like the physical reality of us, whereas the higher forms of existence, which we belong into, in my opinion, are made of subtle matter, or maybe even pure energy. The higher you move up in the frequency rail, right?
Yeah, like light beings they talk about.
Yeah, bingo, exactly, right. Now, if you can imagine an existence like that, I mean, of course we can't because it's very difficult for us, right? But this would be an existence, in my opinion, free from many of the ills. Maybe not all, but many of the ills that have befallen us here. And I do believe, though, that there's some frequency bleed through. We talked about dreams. That's one thing, but I also believe music is a frequency bleed through in the way it makes us feel, and it can elevate or depress us. Music has got a profound effect on us, and it is really. I like to think of the next level of evolution, the next level of existence when we go back home, where this music is constantly playing in the background. Maybe everybody has their own music that's always like airflow here. We feel the wind on your face, right? I believe that's just me, right? I believe that in the next leveling up, let's call it leveling up, right? In gamer terms, you like the wind on your face, you will be surrounded by this music at all turns, and maybe it'll be a reflection of your mood, or maybe it'll be a reflection of an area. I honestly don't know, but I do believe there's something about music which makes it transdimensional in a way, right? It just has this quality about it, whereas most other things in our reality here are really gross. When I say gross, they're like, they're unrefined. Is probably the best word. They're unrefined. They're everything is pointing to a brutal existence. Hobbes called it. We got this the man's existence is short and brutish, and it is for the most part. Our existence is interlaced with pain and suffering, and on a scale that is almost incomprehensible. If you try to look at all the suffering in the world in its totality, and just now, right now, in this moment, not what has gone before, what is yet to come, I think your mind would just melt. Your mind would melt. You would not be able to contain that much suffering within you. It's a horrible thing. But it's an everyday reality, and I'm not just talking about the human suffering either, right? Suffering on every level.
Agree.
It is a place of suffering. To some extent, it's our fault. We made it that way. To another extent, it's just the nature of this reality, right? And maybe the great adversary built it that way for a reason. I honestly don't know. Maybe, look, yes, we're meant to be here, but is the purpose to break down our souls, to damage our immortal essence? I don't know. is there some kind of leeching? When people talk about vampires, I mean, there's very, very few monsters are older than the vampire myth, right? So vampires have been, some kind of leeching monster has been with us, for all of our mythologies and histories. Is that like a distant memory or of something that we actually witnessed? The leeching of the energy. Maybe our energy is required for something. Maybe our souls are required for something. I honestly don't know. Or maybe someone's just having a good old time, and maybe all of this is just a practical joke. I don't know. But we have postulated here what this might be. We've postulated why we are required to be here. Not the final reason, but certainly we are here to perpetuate, if quantum decoherence can be trusted, to perpetuate this existence. And the elite is doing what they can because they have become institutionalized. They're prisoners with complete memories, maybe, like I said, long-lived, immortal, whatever.
Dynastic.
Yeah, definitely dynastic. To retain all memories, and they're certainly taking advantage of the situation. And again, if a person is imprisoned long enough, it has been observed, the effect that we call institutionalization, which means they can no longer function on the outside. If you've been in prison for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever, and you're released, you're no longer able to function in the outside world. I mean, okay, most people aren't able to function.
That was a bit of a generalism, but I so get it, Maggie. There's so many people who have been, serving some crazy long sentence are finally freed, and they just say, I can't do this, and they commit a crime to go back into jail where they feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, that's exactly right. And in some countries there's actually a good option. but yeah, so so this is where we are right now. So we've put together a few points around evidence, and I think we've got enough time to actually get through this before the end of the show, that our reality could in fact be digital. I mean, look, when we say digital, we everything we're talking about is within the context of what we understand. Okay, let me be very clear. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. When people saw UFOs in ancient times, they likened them to shields, right, or cigars, right, or something that was culturally significant, something that was understood at the time. Today, we liken UFOs to flying saucers, now because the saucer is a thing for us. That's a fairly recent phenomenon. Before that, we called them something else. But essentially, we now think, okay, there could be spaceships, could be dimensional machines, there could be time machines, again, within the context of our understanding. Like back in the olden days, people might have thought, oh, these are the shields of the gods, these are the chariots of the gods, this is the chariot of Thor, this is the chariot of Hermes, whatever. That's their context. Our context today is, clearly they're spacecraft or time machines or dimensional machines, whatever. Now, having said that, we might be just as wrong as the people they thought these were the chariots of the gods. We could be just as wrong. But we look at it within our framework, within our context of understanding. In 100 years' time, when we've moved along, we might think, it is really, it's a bowl of spaghetti. Because, the improbability generator has created it. And right now, that makes no sense to you, what I just said, right? But in 100 years' time, it might. So we always look at things.
A bowl of petunias and a rather surprised whale.
That's exactly. He's sorely missed. Douglas Adams,
indeed.
we're referring to.
Yes.
Very, very, like if you have never read The Hitchhiker's Guide, which is now actually a quintilogy, I highly recommend it to you. It's a great, it's actually a trilogy in 5 parts. Now, do read the book, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide. So, again, cycling back to saying that our reality is digital, we have what we call the computer analog. So we're talking about the matrix as a computer because we understand computers. We know computers is part of our life. So we're saying it's a computer simulation. Now, in my opinion, nothing could be further from the truth, probably. Because whatever it is, we probably aren't equipped to fully understand. But we call it that because it makes sense to us. And we call it a hologram because it makes sense to us. It displays the characteristics of a hologram. It displays the characteristics of a computer simulation. Do I think it is a computer simulation? No, I don't. Because I believe that it is completely beyond us to understand what the construct of this prison actually is. We give it an analog, so we're saying, okay, we think it's like that. It is like a digital simulation, which we create every day, all day long. We play games. That's a simulation. Every time you play a game, you're in a simulation of reality. Okay, I don't care what game it is, Mario Brothers or Who Dares Wins or whatever people play these days. Who Dares Wins, that gives away my age, doesn't it?
Good
So,
on you.
Right? But the point is that but the point is it's within the context. So please don't take this literally. We're not saying that reality is digital or a computer simulation. The true nature of reality is probably a lot more complex and quite possibly beyond our understanding. We think we're at the pinnacle. Sorry?
Deep thought.
Deep thought, bingo, right? Yeah, exactly. So in fact, we are now, we are in the age of machines building machines. We have reached that age of machines building machines and machines talking to each other. And we're switching them off because we don't know what they're saying. Mm-hmm. But so essentially, just to take this as an analogy. Don't take it as the literal truth. We're trying just to make people understand what it is we're trying to put forward. The word simulation, I think, is as good as any. Even though I don't think this is truly a simulation in the sense that this is not reality. It is reality. It is very real. Okay, this place. Very, very real. And maybe there are gazillions more of it. But I don't think it is our true home. I don't think it is the true reality we should be inhabiting. I hope that's clear. I do hope I didn't.
It makes sense.
Okay, great, cool. So having said that, though, Dave, I mean, let's take these points. Tell us why or what the evidence might be that our reality is in fact digital.
Well, we'll take them one by one. So breakdown of infinite resolution in physics. Now, I mentioned the Planck length already, so this is coming up in this part of the conversation. Infinite resolution causes all sorts of breakdowns of known laws of physics, including matter imploding into black holes at sub-Planck scales. And the inability to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics. They just don't go together. There's one rule for this and one rule for that. Doesn't make sense. Currently, matter and energy, the string theory, and solutions to gravity and quantum mechanics, which is loop quantum gravity, assume a minimal length scale. Furthermore, evidence supports the notion that quantum states are digital in that spin values are quantized and there are no intermediate states, which is anomalous in a continuous space-time kind of thought. As renowned physicist John Wheeler concluded, and I quote, "Every physical quantity, every it, derives its ultimate significance from bits, binary yes or no indications."
And that is counterintuitive to the analog world we want to inhabit, right? Now, the next one is the breakdown of infinite resolution in information systems. It takes an infinite amount of resources to create a continuous reality. And if you ever programmed anything, then you know what I'm talking about. You're always limited by the memory or the processing capacity, right? Or storage, for that matter. But a finite amount to create a quantized reality. So if you got a quantized or a boxed up reality, you know exactly what you need because you define what it is. The very nature of the computational mechanisms of a computer are essentially the same as quantum mechanics, a sequence of states with nothing existing or happening between the states. The resolution of any program is analogous to the spatial resolution of our reality, just at a different level. In fact, carrying Moore's law, consistent over the past 40 years, forward, computers will reach the Planck resolution in 2192. It's mere 180 years away. However, it is not necessary to model reality all the way to that level for the model to be indistinguishable from our reality. Only the observed elements of reality need to be modeled, and then only down to a resolution that matches the observational limitations of our measurements devices. Okay, so you only have to get subsections. You don't have to measure all of reality, which is possible, clearly. You only have to measure subsections, and only to the observational limitations of our measurement devices. A program can do this dynamically. Therefore, given Moore's law and the limitations of observational reality, we should be able to create virtual realities that are indistinguishable from our current reality within 20 years or so. Let me say this again. We should be able to create virtual realities that are indistinguishable from our current reality within 20 years or so. The very fact that our reality appears to be quantized may be considered strong evidence that reality is in fact programmed.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm basing my argument upon. I don't think an analog world would have any such limitations. Let's put it that way. So if you had a flat table with drilled holes which were all countersunk, and you rolled a ball, it would eventually come to rest in one of those countersunk holes. Yeah, that's a digital reality. If the table was perfectly flat with nothing at all in it, and you could roll it, it would come to rest wherever it decided that it had reached its coefficient of friction with the air, the surface, and its rolling momentum. Makes sense. It wouldn't be at one of those predetermined spots. So, number 3, the simulation argument. Various modern philosophers and scientists have posited that we are likely to be living in a simulation. Nick Bostrom, for instance. This is because it is highly probable that we will be able to create ancest or simulations within a few years. When we achieve a transhuman stage, due either to the number of simulations that will be run or the proximity that we are to that stage, it is actually more probable that we are in one than the case that we haven't yet reached that stage. Does that make sense? That the closer we get to making one, the more likely it is that we're in one.
Yes, and the point here is really that like we're talking about, statistically speaking, right? From a probability point of view, it is much more likely that we are in a simulation than not. But again,
before computers came along, Mekki, we had no clue that you could do this.
That's correct.
Our reality was our reality. The moment we started making computer games, now VR goggles, can place us in there. If we can be in an environment that looks absolutely 100% real, then we're more likely to be in one ourselves.
And just to make a point, though, you're right. The advent of computers gave us much deeper insight, but Plato's cave allegory, which is more than 2,000 years old. And I'm sure there are philosophers that thought about this before. He thought along these lines. He thought that the reality that we observed is just shadows on a wall. Now, he didn't have a computer to make the argument as we do. Now we feel very smug. But the thoughts that he had are exactly the same thoughts we have. That reality, so that what we perceive as reality is in fact just shadows on a wall, right? The real reality we cannot perceive. And to have these thoughts thousands of years ago, without the aid of modern technology and science and the advantage of the Matrix movies, this is quite a step. So Plato's brain must have been the size of a planet. Okay?
Brain the size of a planet. Love that,
right?
Mekki. The first time that I'd thought about it was when I first had a glimpse of a Mandelbrot. So when I was able to zoom in and the whole thing was the same. Zoom in again, zoom in again, zoom in again. That was my moment of mathematical connection to us living in something that wasn't real. Because it was the same. It just became the same again. I can see the same patterns. I keep zooming in. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look at Mandelbrot. It couldn't be done before computers.
Yes. It is, in fact, usually the image that you see, like a Paisley. It's a Paisley image that is associated with chaos math. It was very popular a few years ago. The Mandelbrot set is it's a set of equations that once they're put into a graphical or a function or a graphical representation, they become self-perpetuating. So if the more you drill down, the more you find the same, and there's no end to it. So each Mandelbrot set just is more of itself, and that's what they're referring to.
And just like the fern leaf equation, there's a fern leaf equation which produces a perfectly tremendous looking fern leaf. There's a whole bunch, and that's why the Fibonacci sequence and a pineapple are very much the same. That the Fibonacci could be found on the outside of the pineapple, and that's why the whole thing is our epiphany, and that's why where we're at with this. And it might sound, if you haven't caught up with us, this is actually really difficult to get your head around.
Yeah, it is, and we have the advantage of having done this or having thought about this for decades. I was fortunate enough to be in school in Germany, and we did philosophy in high school, and I actually was exposed to Plato at a very young age, just in school, and we spoke specifically about the cave allegory and what it means. So I was just turned 13 or 14. I was.
Wow, Mackie, you're so lucky.
I was lucky.
Opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, but look, to keep going though, matter is data. Matter is data. It was once thought that 0% of matter was empty space. 0%. In the early 20th century, scientists discovered that atoms are actually comprised of subatomic particles. If these subatomic particles, such as neutrons, were made of solid mass, like little billiard balls, then 99.9999999% of normal matter would still be empty space. Okay, so essentially what that means is we live in nothing. Okay, there's more empty space than there is solid stuff, is what this says. That is, of course, unless those particles themselves are not really solid matter, in which case even more of space is truly empty. This was shown to be the case in the 1960s via QCD, or quark theory. Now, string theorists say that even quarks are really just vibrating bits of string, possibly with the width of the Planck length. If so, that would make subatomic particles all but 1 to the minus 38, or minus power of 8, empty space. Okay, so that's the smallest, tiniest thing there is. Hence, normal matter is all but 1 to the minus of 52 empty space. It gets kind of ridiculous at that point, in fact. We talk about things that are so small that it's incomprehensible. In fact, if particles are comprised of strings, why do you even need the idea that there is something material? Good point. Isn't it enough to define the different types of matter by the single number? The frequency at which the string vibrates. Ooh, frequencies again, guys. Everything is frequencies. What is matter anyway? It is a number assigned to a type of object that has to do with how that object behaves in a gravitational field. That's matter. Again, it is a number assigned to a type of object that has to do with how that object behaves in a gravitational field. That's matter. In other words, it's a rule. We made it up. Well, someone made it up. We don't really experience, right? We don't really experience matter. What we experience is electromagnetic radiation influenced by some object that we call matter, which is visual. And the effect of the electromagnetic force rule due to the repulsion of charges between the electron shells of the atoms in our fingers and the electron shells of the atoms in the object, which is tactile. So we see it, that's visual. Okay, that's the electromagnetic radiation. And we feel it, but that's the repulsive force, right? Of the charges between the electron shells and the atoms in our fingers, as well as whatever we're touching. So we're never actually touching anything. I know this is going to be very difficult. We
don't actually touch anything. We don't truly touch it.
That's right. It doesn't. Okay, magnets. Have you ever tried to put the polar equals of a magnet together? You can't. So the polar equals, if you try two like positive or negative poles of a magnet together, they're repulsing each other. That's what we experience. Do you understand? Like, so you can't actually see it. Like the magnets aren't touching. What's touching is the repulsive force. You can't get them together for love or money. Okay? In other words, It's all rules. All rules. In any case, if you extrapolate our scientific progress, it is easy to see that the ratio of stuff to space is trending towards zero. Let me say this again. The ratio of stuff to space is trending towards zero. And space in this case means vacuum, nothing, right? Nothingness, emptiness.
That's right.
Which means what? Well, it means that matter is most likely just data. Matter is data, which again makes perfect sense. If you look at everything else, if you connect the dots. And the forces that cause us to experience matter the way we do are just rules about how data interacts with itself. For example, probability wave functions follow patterns described accurately by relatively simple mathematical equations that resemble probability functions that apply to data. Data and rules. That's all there needs to be. By Occam's razor, this is a simpler and more likely way to describe matter and only requires pure data. Right? I know, this is actually where we get into the really mind-bending kind of stuff, guys. We're not making any of this up. I mean, these are speculations, of course. It's cutting edge of science. All of this might turn out to be complete, bogus and everything is made of green cheese. But it's really important that we understand where science is today, that we understand what science is doing. I think, Dave, you can get the next one in.
I might be able to do it. I'm going to start right now. Are you ready? Computational analog and the observer effect. Of course, one does not need to model reality all the way to the Planck level for the model to be indistinguishable from our reality. An efficient program would dynamically generate incremental resolutions of various components as needed, such as when an object is put under a microscope. Extending this concept to the quantum level, once a subatomic particle is observed, the program must then establish properties for that particle, effectively resulting in the collapse of the probability wave function. In 2008, the Institution for Quantum Optics and Quantum Information, which is IQOQI, I like how that, what's that word, Mickey, when it's backwards and front? Anyway, in Vienna, determined to a certainty of 80 orders of magnitude that object reality does not exist by itself and only comes into being when consciously observed. Thus,
boom. Sorry,
I know. Boom. Thus, the uncertainty of this results in a 1 in, let's just say, quadrillion, billion, trillion, billion, million. Clearly a ridiculously small number. This effectively put a nail in the coffin of the last hope for objective realists, the hidden variable theory. Interestingly, we can establish a very real explanation for this effect by turning the evidence question on its head. Thus, if you were to program a universe simulation, what kinds of programmatic efficiencies would be needed? Most important, would be employed dynamically reality generation. So how would you make it all work? In other words, for any space unobserved by a conscious entity, there is no sense in creating a reality for that space in advance. It would unnecessarily consume too many resources. Instead, macroscopic reality may be modeled with an extremely high degree of compression, which I've estimated to be, that's the writer, to be about 100 trillion. But once you decide to isolate the subatomic particle in that macroscopic object and observe it, the program would then have to establish a definitive position for that particle, effectively resulting in a collapse of the wave function, or decoherence. Moreover, the complete behavior of the particle at that point might be forever under control of the program, like a finite state machine. After all, why delete the model once observed? In the likely event that it will be observed again at some point in the future. Thus, an efficient process of zooming in on reality in the program would result in exactly the type of behavior observed by the quantum physicists, fully explaining the observer effect as well as quantum entanglement. In other words, in order to be efficient, resource-wise, the program decoheres only the space and matter that it needs to.
Yes, exactly.
Just like the computer programs that we write, we don't render the entire scene, only the viewpoint.
Exactly, and the movie, The 13th Floor, if you do get a chance to watch it, actually represents that beautifully as a thing. So this guy finds out that his reality is in fact a simulation. He drives and drives and drives. He drives past all the roadblock signs, and he gets to a space that hasn't been rendered yet. So it looks like a Tron space, like black with green lines, like a grid pattern, and he goes, oh my God, right? And then he actually manages to upload himself into the real reality, or what he thinks is real reality anyway, right? Into the body of the person that had come to visit his. Anyway, it's a really cool movie if you get a chance to see it. And we made it because the music hasn't started yet. So this is great stuff. Thanks, Dave. But isn't this? I mean, I think it's astounding to think about. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where you have to really sit down and go, oh wow. I mean, why? Okay, actually, let's ask the question differently. Why does this matter, Dave?
That's such a good question.
Why does it matter? I mean, so what, Mackie and Dave? So what? So simulation, blah. Well, the point here is, and this is what the ancient secret societies and the ancient wisdom tells us, it is up to us to get out of this prison. All we have given you up to this point is evidence that it looks like we actually aren't living in a real reality. We are living in some kind of prison box. That's all we've done up to this point. That's all. That's it. What you do with that is up to you. What I suggest you do with it is try to figure a way out. We're going to tell you what we think the most likely way out is. You won't like it. You're not gonna, I mean, no, it's hard. It's tough. It's really tough. That's why only very few people ever, manage to do it, because it's tough. It's a tough thing. Unless, of course, the awareness cascade is a real thing, which I hope it is, because that gives hope to everybody, right? Because the thing is this: if we are right, or partially right about some of these things, and you do have to live a certain life in order to get out of here, most people just couldn't do it because we've been way too conditioned to live the way we do. Kill, eat meat, whatever. Don't worry about anything. Just this whole move toward individual. Oh,
there's the music.
There's the music. See you guys.
Hey, have a great week, and we'll see you next week for another Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie.